So, very good afternoon and warm welcome from Haripa Medical. This is your host for the day, Dr. Prakash, who has come back with another webinar, which is our webinar number 9, and it is Heart to Heart with Haripa. Heart to Heart with Haripa, meaning we are not here only going to do the presentations, but also a lot of discussions, which is going to help us and develop and build what exactly has to be known and understood by the medical fraternity and related to this pandemic, because too much have been spoken and unrevealed about this corona infection in this just 45 or 50 days, which we haven't learned since so many years. There have been so many webinars which had spoken a lot about the diagnostic testing and the available clinical trials, the treatment going on, and much more things which keeps on revealing day by day. So what exactly have we have to know with this coming pandemic situation more? So I'll start with this saying it's all about test, test, and test. What exactly this means? If you have been looking into the news channels very cautiously and precautiously, what is the new news going to come up by the government agencies, by the healthcare agencies? So this was basically to understand and know, okay, what exactly these tests are all about. And this line was quoted by the WHO director. It's all about testing, testing, and testing. Then only we'll come to know, okay, what is the problem. So herein we have to choose in between the molecular test or the serological test. Now, what are these molecular tests? We have been hearing a lot. The only available diagnostics test for uh, COVID-19 infection is the RT-PCR. But how much do we know about this RT-PCR? What are the actual details of these RT-PCRs? Is only real-time PCR the answer, or are there any other available options? And to do this, what exactly do we have something called as a rapid testing? Is serology to help work in this current situation or not? And how long we have to stay back, or we have to wait for the serological testing to come up? So it is basically the time matters a lot in this current situation, because we cannot be in the lockdown from last 60 days or so. So we have to come out and we should know what details and what type of test has to be chosen and gone ahead. So the first, we have the session into two speakers for the day. The first is basically on the viral transport media, because as being diagnostic people, as being the laboratory professionals, we are going to talk more so on what are the pre-analyticals. Basically the pre-analytical here lies and the importance of a viral transport media, which is what, and its impact on testing. So what exactly the viral transport media is, what exactly we have to know about this, how do I choose, are there any thorough guidelines or recommendations for choosing a viral transport media, because this is the first line of contact between the infection and its diagnosis. If that is not gone well, then it is a problem. And how does it matter? A lot. A matter in this, in a way of like collection and transportation. So exactly what we should know about a viral transport media is very, very important. So with this, I would like to introduce Dr. Prashant Nag, who is the first speaker of the day, who is going to talk more on the viral transport media, the transportation and how do we choose a viral transport media. Dr. Prashant Nag is an MD in pathology with from Renowned Institute, AIMS, Delhi. He has also been worked as a chief consultant at many labs, and he's also heading an accredited lab which is under Sterling Accuris. He's a zonal head for Sterling Accuris in Delhi NCR as well as the Lucknow region and the Western UP region. And he is a molecular pathologist as well. His areas of interest lies in human genetics, infective molecular biology, hemoglobinopathies, and hematology. To his credentials, he have 7 international publications in the reputed journal. So without wasting much time, we will go ahead with the topic, which is very basic, but which is very, very important for me as well. And I hope it is going to be important for all of you. So over to you, Dr. Prashant.
Good afternoon, everybody. So, in this lockdown, we all people, we all are want to upgrade our knowledge by webinars, and at times we feel why there are so many calls for webinar. But believe me, knowledge is something which we all know is always on a part that we have to increase it further. We have to learn more, and the way infective molecular biology is moving to molecular side, we need to understand it at all levels. See, we all know that quality has all the aspects. Quality is an aspect of pre-analytical, analytical, and post-analytical. To sum up, today I'll be taking more part on pre-analytical. I'm right now also my lab is a COVID lab, so sorry for a hasty. I made a fast presentation morning itself, but still I like to cover the very basic and practical part of collection and specimen collection and transport, specifically to COVID. See, when we see a swab collection, it becomes a very big topic, and ideally it covers the swab can be for bacterial also. For culture, it will be a different thing. For virus culture, it will be a different thing. For isolation, it will be a different thing. So right now, today, I'll be talking mainly in perspective of COVID when we have to put up PCR. So my today's presentation will be based on the guidelines related to that. Although we are open to discussion, any of you can just point out where do you want to discuss, whether if I am doing a swab for Neisseria gonorrhoeae or when I'm suspecting a infection which I don't know, what type of medium we should use, when to use Annie's medium, when to use saline, and when to use other BTMs which we are using right now. So going forward, so in SARS-CoV-2, as we all know that coronavirus is a known virus from a pretty long, and it's a subfamily of a sarbecovirus, and the SARS-CoV-1 outbreak was there before, and now this is SARS-CoV-2, which has started in 2019 December from Wuhan. So there have been guidelines issued by CDC. So my presentation will be more for preparing the audience for this pandemic, that what are the guidelines and how should it be followed. So this virus starts with upper respiratory part. So upper respiratory specimen is the most required specimen. Right now CDC has sent only one nasopharyngeal specimen is good, but ICMR has ICMR guidelines for nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal both. So in India we have to take both the swab, nasopharyngeal as well as oropharyngeal. There are nasal mid-terminate swab. See, it is the phase of the disease which decides how much virus is there in the secretion. In asymptomatic, shedding may be transient. It is there in the morning, it may not be there in the evening. It will all related to the histaminic response of the body towards the infection. So that's why nasopharyngeal swab is best, because there you get the highest yield. You all must have read about this PCR sensitivities. They are saying 70%. So have you thought ever why technology like PCR has a sensitivity of 70%? PCR is 100% sensitive when it comes to sensitivity. Why it is showing 70%? So that is called as, so you have to understand the difference between diagnostic sensitivity and analytical sensitivity. So it is the diagnostic sensitivity which is coming out 70%. When it comes to analytical sensitivity, that when I know that virus is there in specimen, then it is 100% sensitive. But diagnostic sensitivity is going to 70% mainly because of pre-analytical things. So that part you should be very clear that your specimen is the most important part which will be defining the sensitivity and specificity of the test which you are doing. What you give in your lab is the diagnostic sensitivity. What is done in vitro is the analytical sensitivity and specificity, which is done when we develop a kit. So there are nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal are best. Then there is a nasal mid-turbinate swab can also be taken. Anterior nasal swab. See, there is a big in Korea also they did it. What they did is ki person is collecting their own swab. So in that case, anterior nair swab is used because you cannot. It is very difficult. I don't know whether have you how many of you have tried your nasopharyngeal swab on your own. So it is not that easy to take it that deep. You will have an irritation and you will take it before. So putting in an anterior nair swab is the alternative, but can be done only when the IL symptoms is high, that you have a lot of secretions. Then aspirates are there, which can be depending on patient condition, whether I'm taking a nasal wash or an aspirate. We put it as NW, and I'll be talking NW comes only. So, and when I'm taking NW specimen, then it has to, it has a, which I get in from hospital directly. So it has to be in a saline only. I don't put a media there because it is already, it is a washed specimen. So I will not dilute it further. And lower respiratory tract specimen is also an option. And when patient have a productive cough, sputum can also be collected. And induction of sputum is not recommended for simple reason. When induction of sputum you do, like it is done in times in TB, if you do it in that virus part, you will have a lot of immediate sputum, which will not have that quantity of virus to be diagnosed. And obviously, BAL has the highest diagnostic sensitivity till diet because the patient who are going for pneumonia, and if you have a BAL, so for all, it is not just for COVID. It has been proven beyond doubt that BAL is the best specimen when you have pneumonia. So bronchial lavage, you get the best specimen. So another point is our collection boys or whosoever is taking the specimen, whether it is me or anyone. So you are breaking that rule of 6 feet distance from an infected or potentially infected person. So you have to maintain proper infection control. I am not going into detail of biomedical safety, but we all know that what all is possible. That person will sneeze. There is a chance of sneezing and coughing while taking a nasopharyngeal or oropharyngeal swab. So person should stand in the side of the patient, not in the front of the patient. Light should, if he's standing on the left, light should be coming from the right. And so that even if patient is unable to warn, you should explain the patient, please warn me if you are sneezing or coughing. If patient is unable to warn, you have an ample amount of time that patient is going to sneeze. The sneeze directly doesn't come over you if you are on one side. You will escape from major part. Obviously, you are wearing a PP, so some of it will fall on PP. But at least your face or any other part is, even if it is covered with PP, you are safe. So you have to be very careful regarding the collection as well as in its packing, that it has to be a triple layered packing. Self collection is an option and it is being used at places. But in India, we are doing it by collection by trained staff only for nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal swab. So what is swab? You all have seen swabs. My senior colleagues must be seeing swabs for culture from pretty long, and they are habitual of that wooden shaft with cotton. So one thing I want to make very clear, that swab has to be synthetic fiber with plastic or wire shafts. The swabs which are being used for culture of bacterial cultures which have calcium alginate are not to be used at all. Wooden shafts not to be used at all. There are two level problems. They have an inhibition for PCR testing. Plus the biological fibers which are not synthetic, they are very porous. So virus particles may not be well extracted. And third thing is ultimately PCR by rules, we try to avoid any living thing. So CDC, as I told you, CDC is now recommending only nasal swab also, but there's an option you can take both the swabs and put in the same VTM. So that is the part of which you should know. See, whether you are running a molecular or not. Anyone who is running a facility, a hospital, or a lab which is not doing molecular, sample collection is something which is already coming to you or going to come to you. Right now, you might be calling a person who is coming with PPE, like my guys are going everywhere and collecting. But that is happening just because right now in India, we are still doubtful community phase is not there or not. But even if the community phase is there, we don't feel that prevalence has gone above 10%. So right now, load is very low. So when it is going by geometric progression, we know. So by the end of the next lockdown or by the end of next 20 days, we'll be seeing enormous amount of requirement of sample collection. So if you are a healthcare worker, irrespective of a place, whether it is a nursing home, whether it is a hospital, whether it is a lab with or without molecular, sample collection part is going to come to you. So one has to be very, very cautious, and how to go about it, one should know. Then I have just taken the procedure part also of nasopharyngeal swab and oropharyngeal swab. So what you should know is the distance of how much in you have to go to get the nasopharynx. So what you have to explain is, see, a nasopharynx distance is the distance between my external part of the lip up till the middle part of my external ear. So that practically becomes, for my face, it is around 1.5 fingers. So you have to say 1.5 finger to your collection boy. They have to go in with a 45-degree tilt to go inside. That is the way. If you will not do this, your collection will be faulty. And DNS is a very common problem. So a person should be clear and explain that this is something, at times the nose is not straight, the bone is curved. So in that case, they have to be clear. If they are finding it obstructive, take it out, put it in the other nail, because DNS will be on one side. So the other part will be clear. So they can take a nasopharyngeal swab from the other nails. In when you are doing an oropharyngeal swab, it goes like you have to go to a pharynx in the tonsillar area, and you have to swab it over, roll it there, and take it back. So you have to be swift, but still it will take at least 3 to 4 seconds. And you should not touch the teeth, gums, anything, because food particles itself will have their own DNA, RNA, and that will interfere with the extraction. So the more you can avoid, the better. So this is a CDC protocol with figures. Like what practically is required is the 70-degree angle and the distance between the external ear and lip. So that is the part which you should know. And when you put the swab inside the VTM bottle, the size of swab is long because you have to go inside. So many swabs have a breaking line, some doesn't have. So those who have a breaking line can cut off, and those who don't have, you can cut. You can keep a small scissors and you can cut it, put it in, and tie it up, lock it up. You should have a locking mechanism in the VTM part also, because it is high potentially infective. Although in VTM they try to attenuate virus by some additions of chemicals, but you cannot loosen your infection control with this thought process that your VTM will not infect you. So you should be always very careful in locking it up and then opening again and putting the oropharyngeal swab there. Now come to the transport part. See, molecular detection methods do not require replication competent virus, but preservation of nucleic acid is essential. This is the important line when I am talking of PCRs, especially for virus, and right now for COVID. So there are different types of VTMs. There are viral transport media simply. Then there are MES transport media, which is used both for virus and bacteria. In sterile saline is used. So what you should know in VTM, the component of VTMs. What VTM is being used in COVID or viral transport media used for PCRs have a component called as a buffer. They have a component as buffer. They have a component as there is protein to stabilize the virus. There is a buffer. There is an antibiotic. There is an antifungal, and there is something called as material which to attenuate the virus, which may or may not be there. So what you have to see, this is a buffer solution. Generally, what guidelines are there, Hanks solution is used. Then you have bovine serum, which is practically a viral culture media. So it will let virus go. Then we will put amphotericin B, that will be practically an antifungal. We will put in gentamicin, which will be antibacterial. All those who are sending sample for cytogenetics and all, you must be knowing you are putting gentamicin drops there also. That is practically you have to put an antibacterial, because any other growth will make that genetic material interfere. So it has to have an antifungal, it has to have an antibacterial, it has to have an this bovine serum, and then a Hanks solution. So these are the part. And this is the simple VTM on which you can transport the through which you can transport the specimen. Transportation, the virus survives virus or the viral material. See, even although we are putting hand solutions, so isotonicity is maintained. Even if isotonicity is not maintained, virus ruptures, then also you don't lose as far as RT-PCR is concerned, because genetic material is very much there. So that way, till 72 hours there is no issue. If it is more than that, then you should put it in -70. You should not put it in -70 the very first day if you are planning it to send. For simple reason, repeated thawing destroys the genetic material. So what we prefer is we don't take samples, and right now we don't require transportation is such and lab availabilities are such that you don't get specimens which are taking more than 72 hours. So 2 to 8 and 72 hours can be maintained, and we are using that, and we feel that is the best part. So that is the part of VTM mainly which I want to interact today. I have tried to keep it short and swift related to this. Anything which you like to discuss or any questions, or Prakash, do we need to take questions at the last? Please tell.
Oh, no problem, sir. We can take it now. There was one question which came up, so I thought I'll discuss it right now itself.
Yes, please.
It was like for self collection. Do you do any? I mean, do you encourage doing self collection of healthcare workers by on their own, so that there is minimal interaction with the person who is doing the collections?
See, there are protocols,
especially for healthcare professionals who are working in the hospital.
Right. So there are hospitals which are doing daily self collection in Germany, daily, of their contact staff, and they are doing their pooled serum, pooled RT-PCR daily or twice weekly or 15 days, depending on the position and how much public interaction and healthcare there is there. And there definitely self collection is best, because putting a PP for a staff and taking another, it's not just about the money part involved, it is also the cumbersome part, because they are working there and they are asymptomatic people, and we are doing it just to contain. See, this is a very important point which you have. In whole COVID thing, we have to understand that we are doing a lot of things to understand the epidemiology and the spread, not to treat. So our protocols are driven by that.
Right.
So whether it's pool testing, right now we are not talking of pool testing, but if you talk of pool testing, that is also dependent on epidemiological data, whether my prevalence is more than 5% or less than 5%, what type of pool we should do, whether a VTM pool or swap pool. There are so many things which are being talked about.
Okay. So, and there is one more question related to this. What are the chances of false negativity in nasopharyngeal swab? I think even we have Dr. Geetika also, so that we can take this question later on as well, right? And accordingly, we will continue with the molecular testing. So thank you so much for your session,
Thank you.
Dr. Prashant. So here now we move on to the another topic, which is like the world of molecular and serology testing, which is what I say the world of molecular biology. It's very tough. First of all, the word itself is very tough. When you say molecular, everybody like gets shaken up. Okay, what do you mean by molecular, and how do I go about? And there has been a many confusion when I myself was just an MBBS pass out and trying to understand. Okay, does molecular mean genetic or karyotyping or cytogenetics, or what exactly it is? And today we are trying to understand these details whenever we had certain types of infections coming into picture. The infectious molecular testing, or say here malignancies or oncology molecular testing has come up as a big time to support the entire diagnosis. So I am not an expert on this, and today for this we have an expert on this who will be talking and explaining us the technologies of molecular testing. What are the simple and the basic recommendations when I choose a test? What should I know before I begin? There might be many hospital owners or the laboratory professionals who might be willing to start the testing. And very importantly, how do I interpret the result? Because I don't know what type of copies, how many copies are going to be positive, negative. And importantly, as a diagnostic person, as a lab professional, for me, quality control is very, very important whenever we do a testing. So for this, I would like to invite Dr. Geetika Reddy, who is an MD microbiology from Kasturba Medical College and Manipal University. She is currently a consultant microbiologist as well as heading the Hospital Infection Control Committee at Medicover Group of Hospitals. Along with this, she have an excellent academic association as an assistant professor and of Department of Microbiology at Maheshwar Medical College, which is in Telangana. She is also in charge of Serology Central Laboratory at Medicover Hospital, and she helps infection control certificate, and she has done course which is actually giving her an identity of being an infectious specialist person as well, along with microbiologist. So over to you, Dr. Gitika. You can start with your presentation.
Good afternoon to everyone. Today I'm going to discuss about molecular techniques, how we are going to interpret them clinically, because doing and choosing the test is really very important for us. So with this brief glimpse, I'll go ahead with my topic. So it is about the molecular diagnosis of COVID-19 and molecular diagnosis, its practices and understanding. So a short brief note about the characteristics of the coronavirus. I know most of them will be knowing about it, but still I want to stress about the structural proteins, because the most of the tests are genes like protein, envelope protein. When a sample reaches to the microbiome, as the previous session, the things which and the analytical phase influences the analytical and post-analytical phase. I mean, your proper sample collection will yield a good result in the analytical phase. Your sample collection, you are doing it in a right way, then we'll get a right results. So a short glimpse of the workflow. When a patient comes to your hospital with a symptoms, you're going to collect the sample. It could be either nasopharyngeal, oropharyngeal swabs. Mainly in COVID infections, we can collect an upper respiratory as well as lower respiratory tract samples. We are not collecting lower respiratory tract samples, not because they don't have a good sensitivity or specificity. We'll look into that matter of sensitivity coming slides. So today I'm going to focus mainly on the analytical phase. So what is the main importance of collect a right test collection? Pressing it, it is very important. If you want, your sample should be good. If you collect your testing strategies. So WHO has given few testing strategies, whom to test and when to test. So I have just made a pictures, but all the wordings what I'm going to talk is from the ICMR. It says that you have to collect a sample from the patient who says his travel history of travel prior to 5 days, 7 days, or 14 days before the onset of symptoms. Symptoms like fever, dry cough, malaise, shortness of breath, and diarrhea. And patient with a SARI, that is severe acute respiratory illness. Any healthcare worker who is symptomatic, you have to test them. And a laboratory person who handles the sample, because they are at risk. So if they say that they are having any above symptoms, you have to test them for the COVID infection. And this is the ICMR referral form of the sample. This is to be filled by the clinicians. I'm not going to go much into the sample collection because it is already dealt. Transportation of the sample. It is really very important. When you are transporting the sample, you have to put it in 3 Ziploc covers. First, collect the sample and close the sample with the help of the cotton. That is an absorbent material. If at all the sample leaks, you are preventing that from getting infectious to the person who is going to collect the sample at the other end. And then you have to pack it in the other Ziploc cover. So when you are doing this procedure, you have to label with a biosafety hazard sticker and then send the sample. And the samples which are there, we have already know what are the samples we have discussed, and viral transport media should be used. In depth, sir has told you about the viral transport media. Swabs, please remember, no cotton swab. It will not give a good yield of the virus. We are going to collect a polyester swab is used with a flexible shaft, or you can use a nylon swab. So analytical phase, today I'm going to deal with viral analytical phase. The most methods available to test for the COVID-19 is viral cultures, serological methods, and molecular methods. We are not going to culture a virus. And especially coronavirus, no, because it is highly infectious. So, and when you culture, it shows a cytopathic effect. When there is a cytopathic effect, it takes 3 days to develop a cytopathic effect. So it is very difficult for us to culture also. Serological methods and molecular methods we are going to see. So molecular methods, molecular diagnosis, generally what are the samples we can use? We can use upper respiratory and lower respiratory samples like nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal swabs, sputum, BAL and ET aspirate. Others like blood, stool and urine. Here comes your type of sample and the sensitivity. So if you take an oropharyngeal swab, it is 32% sensitive for PCR. I'm talking about PCR here, standard of test. So 32% sensitive for PCR. So what is this 32%? As sir said, it is a diagnostic sensitivity. It is not the analytical sensitivity. If you take an analytical sensitivity, what is analytical sensitivity? How many times that your testing procedure is giving the test positive, that is, it is labeling the infected person as infective, that is your analytical sensitivity. Diagnostic sensitivity is taken into criteria when it is taken about the sample. If you are collecting the sample properly, that will influence your sensitivity. Nasopharyngeal swab, it is 63% sensitive, sputum 72 and BAL 93. And blood 1%, feces has a 29% sensitivity. So when you look into this picture, most of them will have a fair doubt of highly sensitive swab and a oropharyngeal swab, because sputum and BAL mainly are aerosol generating procedures. To collect a BAL sample, you have to do a bronchoscopy, and for that you need a pulmonologist. He will never turn up to collect a BAL sample from a SARS-CoV-2 patient. So that's the reason we are not collecting the lower respiratory samples. So molecular methods, here are few molecular methods I have listed out. That is RT-PCR, TrueNat beta-cow test, and Cepheid Expert Express, which is similar to that of GeneXpert, which are using for TB. Cobas 6000 and 8800. LAMP, that is RT-LAMP, and TMA, that is transmission mediated amplification, and CRISPR. So in the above 4 tests, that is RT-PCR, TrueNat, Cepheid Express, and Cobas, are ICMR approved test. So in these 4, only RT-PCR and TrueNat are being approved. Cepheid and Cobas are approved as EUA test, that is emergency utilization assays. Only in emergency you can use Cepheid and Cobas tests. TrueNat is being labeled by ICMR as a screening test. If a TrueNat gives positive for SARS-CoV-2, you cannot consider the test as positive. Make sure you will send the sample for RT-PCR. The confirmatory test is RT-PCR. You're only screening by the TrueNat, and the report should be labeled as presumptively positive. So next, target gene. So now we are talking about the molecular. So what gene we are detecting? So the primers or what the kits which we are getting now are mainly targeting the nucleocapsid, envelope, RNA-dependent RNA polymerase, and open reading frame genes. These are the 4 genes which the kits are targeting mainly. So nucleocapsid gene, CDC recommends testing of nucleocapsid gene. ICMR recommends envelope gene. So in India, mostly we are detecting the envelope gene. So RNA extraction. To perform a PCR, you have to extract the RNA. So there are conventional methods as well as kit-based methods. So I have been labeled here a kit-based method where we are using guanidinium thiosulfate. What is the function of this guanidinium thiosulfate? What does it do? So when you add to the sample, it will lyse the cells present in the sample. So there will be a release of the genetic material like DNA, RNA, proteins, cytosol. What you are going to do after that, you are adding a ethanol. Ethanol will cause the precipitation of the RNA. After that, you centrifuge it, and later on apply the RNase enzyme so that you can elute the RNA. So requirements to perform a PCR. What are the requirements you should be doing to perform a PCR? So mainly you need a reaction mixture. Here it's given target DNA. So, but here in case of SARS-CoV, we need a target RNA as well as a master mix and DNA primers and nucleotide triphosphates for synthesis of the strands. And you need a Taq polymerase, buffers, and also magnesium chloride. Thermocycler, a device that can change the temperatures dramatically. If you look into the procedure of PCR, we need different temperatures for different steps of the PCR. So that's the reason we need a thermocycler. So denaturation. What happens in denaturation process? There will be a double stranded DNA will be getting converted into single stranded DNA. We are talking about the RNA step. First, there will be a conversion of RNA in presence of reverse transcriptase into double strand into complementary DNA. Then it will enter the step of denaturation, that is double stranded DNA will DNA, and step 2 is annealing into the with the. So this is a typical PCR temperatures and times. So for initial denaturation, it needs a 90 to 95 degrees temperature, and for 4 degrees centigrade. So these in 25 to 40 cycles to finish one set of PCR. 3' to 5' points to the 3' end of the RNA. And in presence of time, this RNA is getting converted into this in presence of nucleotides. Phosphates will help you in synthesis. That's how complementary DNA will amplify in the presence of DNA polymerase and forms. So real-time PCR, we don't need to run a gel in real-time PCR. It is when real-time PCR is happening, you can simultaneously graph on your PCR machine when the amplification which have been approved by ICMR. So whenever you're procuring any RT-PCR kits, make sure that this is from this list and this batch of, here the batch numbers are given, only this batch of the kit has been approved by the ICMR. And quality control. Okay, this is very important when coming to quality control. As it is an infectious virus, we are not preparing anything in-house for this as of now. The controls we are purchasing. So the controls will be lyophilized controls, okay? And the controls are containing N, S, E, and open reading frame 1AB regions of SARS-CoV-2 genome. So in quality control, again, it comes all the three phases. In quality control, mainly it should have an assay validation. There should be pre-analytical, analytical, and post-analytical phase. So when we are talking about the assay validation, I've told already, when you procure a kit, you have to validate the kit, whether it is functioning properly or not with the known sample. And you have to document the validated thing. Pre-analytical phase. Again, pre-analytical phase, you have to order the test properly, proper specimen collection, and there should be a proper storage and transportation of the specimen. In the analytical phase is your testing procedure. It is already have started. So when you are extracting your nucleic acid, you should follow all the stringent procedures. Like you have to clean your bench before you start the procedure, and there should be machines you are using, like your pipettes or your centrifuge machines, all should be calibrated. And the result verification is must. In the post-analytical phase, interpretation of the report. You have to interpret the report correctly and resulting to LIS and reporting treatment. Decision and data retention is more important. Limitations. Analysts should be trained and familiar with the testing. What are the limitations of PCR? If you want to do a PCR, your technician should be trained with PCR. And then there are false negative results that occur with the PCR when there is an inadequate viral load in the sample. That means sometimes the patient might not be infectious, but sometimes you're not collecting the sample properly. So that is the reason why you will have a less viral load. Improper collection also is one of the point. If excess DNA or RNA is present in the template, and pipetting errors, if there is any pipetting errors, that time also you will have a next word express. So I wanted to say Cepheid, Cobas, and CRISPR as a game changers in this pandemic. I'm talking about just this pandemic, okay? Let's discuss why. If you look into a Cepheid expert, it is just a closed cartridge we are using. And in this procedure, when you collect the sample is directly placed into the cartridge. You will place directly into the cartridge, and the cartridge is being charged into the instrument. When you place the cartridge in the instrument, inside the instrument, the sample will be filtered and washed. After that, there will be a ultrasonic lysis of the sample. Whatever the sample is present in the cartridge will be lysed. After that, the PCR dried reagents will be present inside the machine. It itself add into the cartridge, followed by amplification of the viral material, that is your RNA. And what are the advantages of Cepheid? See, it does not need any BSL-2 or BSL-3 laboratory. It is highly comfortable procedure. Anywhere, anytime you can do this test. It is fast, accurate, and it is easy to use. As I said, it does not need any special environment or any special clean rooms or large spaces. Nothing is needed for this. But still, ICMR recommends for Cepheid BSL-2 laboratory. Why? Because in the cartridge, it might spill. So this is the reason why BSL-2 laboratory, when you are transforming the sample into the to cabinet, that is the reason why IC Cobas 6000 or 8800. Integrated machine, automated machine, where everything will take place inside the machine itself. Your sample handling time is very less. Like you have to place the sample, then it automatically takes inside, and pipetting and everything will happen inside the sample for a long time. That is the most advantage of the Cobas 6000 or 8800. It can test 14,000 to, if you are procuring a 6000 machine Cobas, it will do a 14,000 test at once, 8,000 tests. So TrueNAT beta cow test. So in India we have kit, and how does it work? This is also a very like a point of care test. It's like a point of care test. There is an disposable extraction cartridge where you will add be extracted. After extracting the RNA, the nucleic acid should be added on the port. The microchip, you can see it here. On the chip, there is a sample port which is in white color. So you will charge the port with the sample. After charging it with the nucleic acid, you should allow it to stay for 30 to 60 seconds. Follow that, you load it into the instrument, and then you can see the CT curve here. I'll explain what is the CT curve. When we perform a PCR, there is a CT curve, that is how much time it is taking for the fluorescence to rise above the threshold. This depends upon your viral load. So always CT is inversely related to your viral load. If you have a high viral load, the fluorescence will rise above the threshold very soon. The number of cycles it is taking to rise above the threshold will be very earlier. So that's what is the PCR cycle number. Based on that, we are going to interpret the report. And TrueNAT beta cow test, I already told you it is a chip-based method. What are the samples we will collect? It is the upper respiratory sample we are collecting. Temperature for this test is 2 to 30 degrees. The test will be finished within 30 to 60 minutes. For a screen diagnostic purpose. lamp, it is this minutes. So if you see here, and this lamp, so this is an RNA EIP primer. It is when it is binding at the 3' it will get converted into cDNA. The B3 primer will come and bind. Liberating this first primer. Sorry, by liberating this first cDNA. When this cDNA is liberated, the FIP primer comes. IP primer, it is forward inner primer. This forward inner primer comes and synthesis of the will lead to the generation of DNA, and amplification keeps on happening.
Dr. Geetika.
Only one temperature it needs, that is 65 degrees centigrade, and it.
Hello, Dr. Geetika, can you hear my voice? Dr. Prakash here. Hello. Hello. Dr. Geetika. Yeah, can you just close down your webcam so that we can hear your voice? There is a little bit of connection error. Now you can continue with the lecture. Yeah.
Can I continue?
Yes, yes, yes.
Or can I on the cam? So there will be a generation of, and we add a fluorescent dye icons, that is a lamp, CRISPR, regularly interspaced.
Dr. Geetika, you can just shut down your webcam and you can be on voice, because there is an uploading and downloading issue happening on your internet connection. So it is not taking the entire bandwidth. So you can be, your voice can be heard by us. You can just put off your camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is a clustered, regularly interspaced short. So when the viral RNA in presence of RT-RPA, what happens is viral RNA will get converted into DNA. Then this DNA will form a complementary RNA. In CRISPR, what happens is there are certain genes like Cas12a, Cas13, and Cas19. So these are some nucleotide sequences which we are using as a target to cleave the target RNA. So Cas always carries a RNA sequence on it. So what is this RNA? It is just like a primer, what we are using. Cas also has one RNA sequence which has 21 viruses ka RNA sequence on it. So when the RNA, the sample is there in the sample, what this bind to that viral RNA and cuts the viral RNA. Then transcript to the viral RNA. Whatever the RNA, this will go and bind and it will fluoresce. One is sciences, Cas13 nuclease enzyme, where nuclease enzyme. But in the 12, there is no carries the fluorescence RNA too. And I want to announce a good thing about the CRISPR here is Indian scientists, Chakrabarti and team from CSIR New Delhi are trying to develop the CRISPR. It is already being developed and they are saying cost per test is 500 rupees. And how do you read? It is just a strip. It is just a strip like your pregnancy test. So the only step involved here is extraction of RNA. After you extract your RNA, you are going to place lateral flow. Sample is having the target RNA. Cas will go and bind to that target RNA and cleave it. And the transcriptor RNA will detect the and that will fluorase. This CRISPR is detecting is E gene, N gene, and RNase gene. It is detecting. So next, serological diagnosis. So serological, going to see about, we are seeing as of now, methods like for lateral flow assays which have been marketing, antibody detection. WHO does not recommend antigen detection test. Why? Because they come positive only in the active stage infection, and that's why of detecting the antigen recommended for the positivity of antigen detection cross react with other human L63 or viruses, human metapneumoviruses. So all these viruses can have a cross reactivity. Antibody detection. Antibody detection used in your 2 weeks after the onset of symptoms. How many antibodies are produced mainly depending upon the patient taking any medication can cause immunosuppression. Not expect your body to produce. It's like HIV. If to do an antibody detection, it could be like, I can't say chance of detecting falls very low. Lateral flow assay. So lateral flow assay, are the laboratory persons, you will be knowing about it. So if the sample is containing the antibody to the antigen, cellulose move forward and bind to the immobilized anti-human antibody, be a fluorescence, which could you just have to prick and then collect the blood and place it on the sample port, then buffer thing. Antibody test. One thing we are missing, if you are detecting the antibody, it is like out to know the disease transmission is missed. Clinical intervention, cross reaction with other humans, possible with the antibody detection also. Says to use active and detection. This is the kits market for procuring. I have underlined Meilang Healthcare Limited, which most of the laboratories are using, and ICMR clearly states recommended for. So we cannot use this for diagnosis. And ELISA. Okay, now again a good news from India that NIV Pune has developed the ELISA testing kit, but the details about the kit has not yet released. It will be coming into the limelight on 17th of May. So just we have and post-analytical phase. So in post-analytical, whether the or not, that is very important. And you should know whether he is cured or not. So that you have to collect 2 specimens and the 4 hours come negative, then only it is cure. Test and its procedures. So I'm summing up here. Any patient with SARS-CoV-2 infection is coming to your laboratory. There are certain tests which can be used for screening, certain for test right now available as a diagnostic test. Come into the zone of screening because ICMR or WHO approve them for, and when it is coming to the use RT-PCR, anti-SARS-CoV-2 disease staging, like infection. So now what is the age? Whether the patient, that is prognosis. How is the therapy important? And epidemiological surveillance, that is anti-SARS-CoV-2 antibodies can be used for the epidemiological surveillance. So this graph is really very important. Just pull over your ears and listen. Here, look into the graph. Is from the symptoms onset, in nose as well as, if you see, there is a period where RT-PCR is coming. RT-PCR is coming false negative and false negative. In between lies the RT-PCR diagnostic window. So if you are detecting to the onset of symptoms, if we are detecting 5 days, then there is no of time. You can just X-ray or a CT scan. If they are showing any changes, as ground appearances, ground glass, and you can just label clinical diagnosis and wait. Don't have any test in this period. You can do an RT-PCR 5 days prior to the days after the onset. Use an RT-PCR. About your rapid diagnostic kits. Your rapid diagnostic kits can be used 5 days after the onset of symptoms. That is here. During this period, your rapid diagnostic test kits like your antibody detection kits can be used. And one more thing, when your RT-PCR threshold is falling at the 20th day, this is the time where your antibody detection kits will be helpful. This is the reason why you have tests. Single RT-PCR is not going to help you. Though the rapid tests are a screening test, combine it with the RT-PCR so that you don't know. There are so many asymptomatic cases which are coming up and we are missing the diagnosis. So in this asymptomatic cases, you cannot directly go for RT-PCR expensive test. So you can just do a kit-based methods where you can and sensitivity of the test. Of course, in the first PCR is pretty much, when you look into the antibody detection, it is little lower when compared to that of RT-PCR. As the days progresses, in the second week of infection, your antibody starts rising. Antibody detection, second week of infection. Yes, 100% will give you the result. Diagnostic testing. Combination, as I said, along with your RT, IgM and IgG has come negative, only your RT-PCR has come positive. What does it mean? That the patient is in a coming positive, and that implies infection. If all the three are coming positive, your RT-PCR, IgM, and active infection. If RT-G is coming positive, it can be a late or If RT-PCR is negative and IgM is positive, then it is a antibody is coming. T is positive, your RT-PCR and implies past infection or recovery. RT-PCR is negative, IgM is positive and IgG is positive. Then it is a recovery phase. So these are the other lab parameters. Why are these other lab parameters are also very important? Because when you have diagnosed a SARS-CoV-2 patient with your RT-PCR, so next is how to see whether the prognosis is happening or not, how to monitor the patient. Mainly leukocytosis, neutrophilia, and procalcitonin. If these three are rising, that implies the patient is having a secondary bacterial infections. If these three are rising, having a secondary bacterial infections. And your liver functions will get deranged. So you can see raises and bilirubin, kidney injury. Why I'm telling this is as well, when you are monitoring your patient, which test to order and how to go about it. And D-dimer is simply a marker of sepsis also, like this, and you have to interpret your reports. And biochemical and viral correlation. So there is one study by, this study has stated that when there is a viral shedding, these LDH, CK levels and serum potassium, LDH, CK levels and serum potassium levels, all these three will be very high. But when the viral shedding is stopped in your PCR, LDH, CK levels and serum potassium will come back to normal. Why serum potassium only? Because you all know the pathogenesis of the virus, it will act on 2. Enzyme 2 inhibited here, what happens is there will be a potassium. CE2 is reverse of enzyme conversion. That is hypokalemia. When it will be coming prognostic marker. And this is just a thing out of the box from my topic content, that is chest CT and RT-PCR. I felt really interesting. So this study states that chest CT. So whenever a patient walks in with the symptoms of cough, respiratory distress, like shortness of breath, that just do a CT scan. When you are doing a CT scan, you will find round glass appearance and because most of the times when they are getting a CT scan appearance similar to that of COVID, like presumptive of COVID, so that is correlating with the RT-PCR, that use the CT scan also. And streamlined resourcing. So everybody knows it is a test. What is ICMR? What about your WHO? Everybody also wants to get tested. Testing ample amounts of kits with us to test. So ICMR has the samples. So you into one sample, and that particular sample is coming positive. Then what do you? And every sample of that 5 people, and then see which patient sample is coming positive. Certain restrictions done in low or less, cannot do the cases like in healthcare work. The testing advantages of pool testing is the testing capacity and manpower and cost. The take home RT-PCR, everything is finished. No, because I have showed you a graph where it states when the RT-PCR comes positive, when the RT-PCR does not come positive. So keep in mind while you are seeing a patient, take the history. And the history should be properly collected and then ask about the clinical features, go about with the radiological diagnosis, then order your RT-PCR along with the antibody testing. Both should be ordered, combined test. And in the period of monitoring and prognosis, whatever you want to see the other lab parameters. Then you will arrive at the right diagnosis for the patient. Thank you. This is all for today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gitika. Your talk was really informative, but because of certain internet connectivity issues, we couldn't hear much and it was breaking. And there is a collaborative suggestion by all the audiences. If you're listening my voice well without any internet issues, you are supposed to speak again to everyone. So we are getting the suggestions from each and every audiences that this session was absolutely brilliant, and as an information put up towards whatever you had done on molecular testing as well as right from the beginning. It is very difficult to take up the questions because the time is anyways overshooted, and I know Dr. Prashant have a meeting with ICMR also at this time. But there is one question which I would like to take, which is very simple, and in the sense I have just bucketed it out. Basically for sample collection, it is like, what is the combination of nasopharyngeal swab and oropharyngeal swab taken together improves the testing or the sensitivity of the results?
Unable to.
Plus, why not sputum sample? Okay, sputum sample is not utilized much. Why it is so?
Yeah, I've already explained. BAL, when it comes, they are most aerosol generating procedures. That's why we don't recommend to collect a sputum or BAL samples. That is the main reason. It is not based on the sensitivity. It is mainly based on cutting the chain of transmission.
Okay. And Dr. Prashant, what is your take on this?
See, there are two things. We are using oropharyngeal along with nasopharyngeal in India with a thought process that the disease process itself starts with URT and moves to LRTI. So when it is going towards LRTI, we may improve sensitivity by including oropharyngeal. So that is the reason we are using oropharyngeal. Although CDC has outrightly said you can use only NPS. There are reasons for CDC to use only NPS because nylon Dacron swabs have gone in real scarcity across worlds. Right now, across world, they have polyester swabs. Polyester swabs are good, rather very good, but not best when it comes to nylon Dacron are best. So that is the reason to conserve that part. They have already said that only NPS gives a good sensitivity. Another thing which you said was about sputum. Regarding sputum, see, you have to understand virus, the place where it is colonizing, that is the best place to catch it. So, as Dr. Gitika said rightly, that sputum is an aerosol generating process. That is also an important part. Another part is since we are doing an epidemiological study when patient is not become symptomatic, patient is asymptomatic. So you will not have lot of viral shedding, and plus there will be transient viral shedding. So you need to brush colonies. So that part happens best with NPS and OPS.
Okay. There are so many questions which are supposed to be answered, and because of the internet issues, what we were facing at Dr. Gitika's place, people have actually, the audiences across have been appreciated this lecture, whatever they were seeing on the screen, but there was a voice disconnect. So we need to have this session again. We'll probably will be sharing the information with all of the audiences. So I have to wind up this, but before the audiences run away from this session, I have questions for all the audiences. With the current situation, whatever we are seeing today, for the revised policy which has come up for the discharge, and now earlier there was a policy of where there has to be 2 negative reports coming for RT-PCR and then only you can discharge. So it's because I have the healthcare professionals joined together. So I have certain of these questions which I thought I have to put forward to all of you, and you can come up with an answer and you can mail up to the email ID which I will be providing. How do I assure a patient when they are infection free? Or after the infection, how do I say them what to do now? There is no test, as the government is saying right now. Is clinical remission enough to discharge a patient? If the patient is throwing no symptoms, will you send the patient just like that home for with a policy of isolation? Any There is no investigations or any baseline testing for mild or moderately COVID positive patients, because this is also what I have understood till date. There would be a problem in getting this sampling for the mild and moderate patients. It will be allowed mostly to the patient who are severely showing symptoms of ARDS. And I have one question from as a pathologist or as a diagnostician. Will CBC, CRP, and chest X-ray support the clinical symptom-free or the symptom-free COVID-19 patient for which we are not going to test any RT-PCR again? So this is a question which I have for the audiences and everyone, all the healthcare experts and the diagnostic experts and the clinical experts who have joined in this understanding of the COVID-19 diagnostic part as well as the management part. So this is what I thought I have to put it, because yesterday only this has come up. We have to lay down certain guidelines from our side also, when I should allow the patient to come back to go home, and the home his people should also accept him, either he is COVID free or not. And we are not doing RT-PCRs now, right, as per this revised policy. So I think these questions make up an important aspect of having another sort of a discussion or a panel discussion, I guess. And with this, I'm just taking your leave, and I'm really apologize for the internet connectivity issue happening. And as a pandemic came on of a sudden, there can be issues coming on of a sudden from any side, any nook and part of our lives. Let it be technology, or let it be our lives, or let it be the health, or let it be economic crisis. So yes, there was a crisis, but crisis with a very informative information behind. And Dr. Gitika, we would like to have your recording again sometime. And we have a suggestions that you speak up again, because your information was brilliantly put upon. And along with the feedback of Dr. Prashant also, as we had already discussed on this entire topic. So thank you so much, audiences, for being there. And I hope you answer the questions, or give your comments on the questions which I have shared earlier on hematology.hin@horiba.com. And with this, I'll take a leave, myself, Dr. Prakash, and from entire Horiba medical family. Stay safe, stay healthy, and take care of yourselves. And thank you so much to Dr. Gitika and Dr. Prashant once again, and to the entire audience who were there for almost 1 hour 15 minutes, even though in the crisis of internet connectivity issues coming up here and there. So thank you so much, and write down to us at hematology.hin@horiba.com. Thank you, and Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. Thanks, sir.